this video, I'm going to talk about MQ integration between DataPower and the MQ server. This is the demo part. If you need conceptual understanding of it, you can watch the first part of this video where I have explained conceptually how the integration between DataPower and MQ looks like and what are the key objects that you are supposed to configure. In this video, I have an environment ready where I have a DataPower appliance, an MQ server where the MQs and the relevant queues, queue manager, etc. are all set up. And then I have a testing tool at my disposal, which is Postman, which I'm going to use to invoke the integration to test and see whether the MQ connectivity or the MQ scenario works fine or not. If you are interested in knowing how to set up this environment, I'll create a new video for this. Otherwise, this one is going to be too long. So let's get started. Let's first log into the DataPower appliance. I'm using the username and password. So this is admin. And here I am on the DataPower. You know that the key object that you have to configure on DataPower is an MQ queue manager. So let us type here MQ. Now, if you see, you have several options related to MQ queue manager. So the one you see here, there is one, and then another one is over here. Okay. Here I'm going to choose MQ9 plus queue manager. This is because I know beforehand that the MQ server I am interacting with is a server having version greater than 9. If you are dealing with a MQ server with version less than 9, then go for the first option, which says IBM MQ queue manager. It is important to configure the correct object. Otherwise, the MQ connectivity won't work. So let's click on Add button. Now there are several options over here. You see there are several tabs over here. There are several options over here. And it might look daunting, but there is no need to fill up all the details over here. The essential details we're going to fill up right away. So let us say it QMGR. Any name can be given, 1. And then the essential things are host name. So this is the remote MQ server host name or IP address. In my case, this remote name is this remote server is this IP address. So I put here the IP address and then the queue manager name. This is a remote queue manager name. So in my case, the remote queue manager name is QM1. Fine. Now I need to provide the channel name as well. So in my case, the channel name is dev app server con. So I go ahead and put this detail over here. So essentially I provided 3 details over here. MQ server host name, MQ server port name, and then the channel name. So these 3 details are here. Remaining all details, I'll keep it aside. Now a bit of security. So go to MQ CSP. Here I'm going to provide the username and password that is required to access that channel. If I do not provide this, you will get an MQ related issue. So first, I do not provide this. Let's click on Apply button. Let's see what happens. So you see that queue manager is in down pending state. If I click on View Log, you will see that queue manager error QM reason code 2035. If you check this reason code 2035, you will find that this is an authentication related issue. So this security criteria is not fulfilled and hence I need to supply this user ID and password. So what is the user ID and password? Well, in my case, the user ID happens to be app and then the password I will say QMGR So here I provide the password for it. The password is not this, but actually this. So I'll provide this password here. If you are interested in knowing this environment, as I said, watch my other video where I have discussed about the setup of the MQ server um, and uh, uh, and the related details. So click on the apply button. Now click on apply and let's see. So now you can see that this queue manager is up and running. It is essential for it to be up and running. If its state is down, you cannot proceed ahead further. Okay. If you click on the view log button, you will see that its operational state is up. So once this queue manager on DataPower is up and running, we are ready to deal with any kind of application scenario dealing with the MQ. One important thing to note here is that while I configure the MQ queue manager on DataPower, you might have seen that I haven't provided any kind of queue related detail over there. Why? Because queue details are something that you provide dynamically uh, during the transaction time. So that is precisely the reason the queue manager object on DataPower only encapsulates the connectivity details. If you want to specify the queues are specified as part of the MQ URL. Okay, fine. We'll see it in action right away. Now, let us build a simple use case. The use case is that I have a multi-protocol gateway which is exposed on HTTP protocol. For simplicity, I'm exposing it on HTTP rather than HTTPS. Now, you can post a message on this multi-protocol gateway. We'll post a JSON message there. And then we will put this message directly on an MQ queue. So MQ is acting as a backend for us. Okay, so this is a scenario where we will put a message on the MQ server. So let's click on the multi-protocol gateway. Let's get started with this. Click on the add button. I'm starting brand new here. So this is a brand new multi-protocol gateway. We'll say it MQ demo mpgw. Okay. Here I'm going to use the default XML manager. In the processing policy, I'll create a very simple processing policy. Processing policy 1, and I click on a new rule, and here I will say client to server rule. Double click to open it. Whatever is the default one, we'll accept it. Drag and drop results action. And nothing. So you can see that there is no message processing that I'm doing here. Why? Because my primary intent is to show you the MQ connectivity and MQ integration rather than focusing on the message processing. So you now click on close window. Here, I need to provide it a front side protocol handler. I told you at the beginning, we'll create an HTTP front side handler. So we'll say HTTP front side handler 1. Local IP is fine. Port number is 8001. Let's keep it like this. Enable the get method, although not required for this integration, but I usually enable the get method. Click on the apply button. So this is the front side protocol handler. Now we must be very careful in putting the default backend URL. Why? Because in this case, this MQ helper is not going to help us out. This is precisely for the reason that we are dealing with version 9 plus MQ server. Okay, so the default backend URL is going to be this one. Now I'll explain it a little bit. This IDGMQ, we are keeping this protocol because we are dealing with version 9 plus MQ server. Okay. Now our MQ manager is QMGR001. Is it the case? Let's double check it. Here we'll say MQ and Q manager. It is important to get the name right. If not, things would not work. So I'm going to copy this name and put it here. Okay. Now the queue where I want to push the message happens to be dev q1. Okay. So this is the queue, and because I'm trying to push a message on the queue, I use the word request queue. If I intend to read a message from the queue, I'll use the word reply queue. So here, copy it and go back here, just put it here. Okay. Now it is important to put the request response type. So request type is going to be JSON, because we at the beginning of this we decided that we're going to push a JSON message to this MPGW. Response type, you can keep it pass through, because there is no response that you are supposed to get from MQ. So simply pass through is enough. Now click on the apply button. My multi-protocol gateway is ready. We'll check once more if everything is in order or not. So let's click on view status, and here you can see everything is up and running, which gives me the confidence that it is going to work. Fine. So let's save the configuration. Saving is a good idea. Now the third part, testing part. How do I test and prove that this multi-protocol gateway is indeed working fine? In order to test and prove it, I need to check whether messages are indeed going to the MQ or not. So MQ server version 9 onwards, they provide us a web console. You're looking at my MQ server console over here, and I'll go to the queue manager. So my queue manager was QM1, which I referenced in the DataPower. Now here I can see the queues. So here are my queues, and I believe that this is the queue where I intend to put the message. So here I have. As of now, you can see 0 message over here. And here on this palette, there is nothing that you can see at the moment. Fine. So we intend to see our transaction data over here as soon as we test it from our testing tool. So for testing, I'm using the Postman. So here is, let's click on new HTTP request. It should be a post request. What should be my testing URL? So my testing URL should be this. Now here I will make a change. Instead of dealing with HTTPS, I'm dealing with HTTP. Remember, we created a HTTP front side handler there. This is the IP address. This is the port number 8001. And here you can put test or ABC or whatever, or if you don't put it, that's also fine. There is no particular URL that we put during the configuration. So it's okay to put anything here. Now there is no authentication authorization configured at my multi-protocol gateway in, hence there is nothing that I need to put here. In the body part, I need to select raw, and here I need to select JSON. Now here I'm going to specify a JSON. So I'll say first name, and here I will say Ajitabh. Simple data. Let's send it. So you can see that this request keeps on going, and it doesn't end. Now, I purposefully did not configure everything because I wanted this to fail, to actually tell you this scenario, because this is going to be how it looks like for the first time. So cancel it. It will not work. Okay. Now go back to the DataPower and check what we did not configure correctly. If you go back to the DataPower and you see here, you will have to remove this propagate URI option. So turn it off. The propagate URI option that was turned on, it resulted in this kind of backend URL. I'll tell you. So let's copy it. So here you can see that our URI is /test. Because of that option being turned on, this backend URL got transformed like this. See this? Now you can clearly see that this is an invalid MQ URL because you are not specifying any kind of request queue or reply queue, etc. It is because of this that transaction went into a state where it will only stop after the timeout period gets expired. We don't want the timeout to happen for the sake of saving some time, so I cancelled it. But I told you the reason why the previous request would never work. So you have to turn off this propagate URI option. If you turn off this propagate URI option, this /test will not be appended here. And hence, the backend URL is going to be this. And this is a valid MQ URL. So let's go back and, oh, I did not click on apply button, did I? Okay, fine. I clicked on apply button. So let us go back and check this. Now see this. In the response, you get HTTP response code 200, but there is no body that you got. This is typical of the MQ integration because MQ did not return you a response body. So DataPower also did not return you a response body. Hence, the response body is empty, but because DataPower has to fulfill the HTTP protocol criteria, it gave you a successful return code, which is HTTP 200. Okay. But this is just what is shown on the postman part. Did this message really land into the required queue? Let's go back and check. So here is my MQ console. I still see 0 message, but let me refresh it. Oh, I see a message right now, and you can see that the application data says first name is Ajitabh. Now let's do it slightly. Let's do another transaction. Last name and send it. Again, I got HTTP response code 200. Let's go back and check. Now you can see that this is the second piece of information that has come. So this concludes the MQ related connectivity or integration with DataPower. Now you might say, okay, Ajitabh, tell me how do I deal with scenario where I have I have to watch an MQ queue and I'll have to read the messages from there as soon as they arrive. If you are interested in building that kind of scenario, then again, you will have to start with a multi-protocol gateway. I don't know in that case how your backend is going to look like because I don't know what you want to do with that MQ messages. But if your requirement is to keep a watch on an MQ queue and pick up the message as soon as they arrive, here MQ front side handler is your friend. So somewhere here, you see, in my case, I would configure IBM MQ version 9 handler. Why? Because I'm dealing with the version 9 onwards server. But in your case, you might end up configuring IBM MQ handler as well if you're dealing with the MQ server less than version 9. In any case, click on this and you see the options here. So here you need to provide the name. In the drop down, you got to provide the queue manager. So again, queue manager is critical. In this case, you will have to just provide the get queue because see, you want to read a message as soon as it arrives on a particular queue. So this get queue is something where you need to specify that, okay, this is the queue name where I want to read. And other details, you can simply ignore them. You can simply ignore them for now. Unless you have very specific reason to configure them, do not configure them. Okay, it works just fine. So it is amazing to see how simple it is. You have to just specify the queue manager, you have to specify the get queue. Now in what cases you have to specify the put queue? See, put queue would be the place where DataPower will put the response back to the MQ. Okay, so this is what the meaning of the put queue is. Now once you configure this MQ handler would act like a poller, which means that it will continue to keep a watch on the MQ queue, and it will pick up the message as soon as it arrives on that particular queue, and then it is going to make it available as part of your processing policy. So in processing policy, you can do whatever you want. So that essentially describes how the MQ integration is going to look like in DataPower world. As I said, I set up this lab on my local laptop. If you are interested in knowing what are different components of it and how to set up this lab, watch my next video where I'll describe how to set up this kind of lab in your local laptop. So that's all for this.